To a company that is quite literally wiring India's future. It's a financial powerhouse you might not know by name, but you absolutely feel its impact every single day. So let's plug in and see what makes it tick.
It's a great question. When you think about all the new power plants, the endless transmission lines crisscrossing the country, or even the solar panels popping up on millions of roofs, have you ever stopped to wonder who's actually bankrolling all of this? Where does the money come from?
Well, a huge part of the answer is this company right here, REC Limited. Now, it's a state-owned, non-banking financial company, an NBFC, and it sits at the absolute heart of India's development engine. Its job? To channel just colossal sums of money into the power and now infrastructure sectors. And REC's own story is really a story of India's growth. I mean, think about it. It started way back in 1969 with a really specific mission: get electricity to rural India. But its role has just exploded since then. Fast forward, you've got a massive IPO in 2008. Then in 2024, it's picked to lead the government's huge rooftop solar program. And just this year, it gets certified for world-class risk management. This isn't just another company. It's a strategic arm of the government. And that brings us to this really important term, Maharatna. REC got this status back in 2022, and let me tell you, this is not just some fancy title. It is the absolute highest rank a public sector company can get in India. It basically signals immense trust from the government, and it gives REC the freedom to invest, to form joint ventures, and really to compete on a global scale. It's a huge deal. So with that history and that elite status in mind, let's look at what's happening right now. And what's happening now is, well, frankly, it's record-breaking. The numbers from just their first quarter of fiscal year 26 are pretty staggering and tell a story of some serious momentum. Let's start with the bottom line. A record-shattering 4,451 crore rupees in profit in a single quarter. That's a 29% jump from the year before, and it's a clear signal of just how much financial muscle we're talking about. So where is all that muscle being flexed? Right here. Disbursements. This is the actual cash going out the door to fund real projects, hit nearly 60,000 crore. To put that in perspective, that is roughly $7 billion deployed in just 3 months. That is an insane amount of capital being put to work, building India's future right now. And to give you the big picture, all of that lending contributes to a total loan book that now stands at a mind-boggling 5.85 lakh crore. That's around $70 billion. It's the result of decades of financing, and you can see it's still growing incredibly fast. So, where is all this new money going? Now this is the real story. For the first time ever, the biggest piece of the pie isn't going to traditional power plants. It's going to renewables. At 31%, it shows a massive, deliberate, strategic pivot. They are actively and aggressively financing India's green transition. Okay, so whenever you see numbers this big and growth this fast, you have to ask a critical question, right? How risky is all this? With a loan book that huge, you've got to check under the hood and see how healthy the finances really are. So let's do that. For any lender, the number one risk is bad loans, or what the industry calls non-performing assets, NPAs, basically loans that have gone sour. For a company the size of REC, keeping this number low is everything. And on this front, what they've managed to do is pretty incredible. And here's the proof. Their net NPAs have dropped to just 0.24%. For a loan book of this scale, that figure is just exceptionally low. It really speaks to the quality of their assets, most of which are backed by state governments, and just how rigorous their risk management has become. And get this, they're not even satisfied with that. This quote from their chairman and MD is incredibly bold. They aren't just aiming to keep bad loans low. Their stated target is to hit 0 net NPAs by the end of this year. That signals an unbelievable level of confidence in their portfolio. Now, here's the really amazing part. While their risk is plummeting, their profitability is actually going up. This chart shows their net interest margin, or NIM. It's the core measure of how much they make on their loans, and it's consistently climbing, now up to 3.74%. So they are lending more safely, and more profitably.
That's the trifecta. So, we just heard that phrase, net zero, in a financial sense. Net zero bad loans. But REC is chasing another, equally important net zero mission: environmental sustainability. It's a dual mission, really. Let's see how they're tackling that side of the equation. Remember that chart showing renewables getting the biggest chunk of new funding? Well, here's the follow-through. The actual money paid out to renewable projects shot up by a massive 63% year over year. This isn't just talk or promises. It is a giant wave of capital flooding into green energy. And their commitment goes way beyond just financing green projects. I mean, look at these stats about how they run their own business. 0 data breaches, a 0 gender pay gap at grade level, treating all their wastewater, converting their own car fleet to EVs. This is a company that is applying those environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, principles across the entire board. Okay, so the picture so far is pretty clear. Massive scale, fantastic financial health, and a big pivot to green. But what about the future? The market is getting crowded. How is REC planning to handle the challenges that are definitely coming its way? And this is the million-dollar, or I guess billion-dollar question on every analyst's mind. Other lenders, public and private, they see this massive opportunity in India's infrastructure boom. And they're jumping in, sometimes with really aggressive, super low interest rate offers. So can REC's amazing performance actually last against that kind of pressure? And this brings us to a really fascinating quote from their CMD. He's tackling the competition head on here. What he's saying is, look, anyone offering these razor-thin margins is playing a short-term game. The key takeaway is this. He's positioning REC not as the cheapest lender, but as the most stable, most reliable, long-term partner for these gigantic, decades-long projects.
And this is how they back that claim up. This is their strategic cushion. They have way more capital on hand than required. They've got the highest possible domestic credit rating, AAA. And, critically, they are the government's trusted go-to agency for its biggest schemes. That gives them an inherent advantage that a competitor focused only on price just can't match.
So it all comes down to this. As India's ambitions continue to soar, can this one financial giant walk the ultimate tightrope, fueling a multi-trillion-dollar development dream while also maintaining the rock-solid stability that makes the whole thing possible? It is one of the highest stakes balancing acts in the country, and how it plays out will help power India's story for decades to come.